One cancelled flight changed my life forever. The voice over the airport intercom cracked like static through the crowd. Attention passengers of Flight 292 to Seattle. Your flight has been cancelled due to severe weather conditions. Please see a representative at Gate C12 for rebooking options. The collective groan that rose in response was almost physical. Emma slumped deeper into her seat by the window, the one that overlooked the tarmac where the rain was hammering sideways against the glass. She'd been awake since 4 a.m, running on caffeine and the blind hope that today would be the day everything went according to plan. Instead, she was stranded in a fluorescent purgatory, her dreams of seeing her sister before the baby arrived melting like the snowstorm outside. She rubbed at her temple. Perfect, she muttered. Just perfect. Across from her, a woman laughed softly, the kind of low, musical laugh that doesn't belong in airports. Emma's head turned automatically. The woman sat cross-legged on the floor near an outlet, a laptop balanced on her knees and a coffee cup in one hand. Her hair was chestnut, long and slightly damp from the weather, falling in soft waves that framed her sharp cheekbones. There was something easy about her posture, like she didn't belong to the chaos around her. Like she'd found her own pocket of calm in a world built on delays. Rough morning? The woman asked. Emma huffed a laugh. That obvious? You look like someone just told you the meaning of life is, please hold. That earned a real smile. Yeah, that's about right. The woman closed her laptop, slid it into her backpack, and stood. She was taller than Emma expected, maybe 5'9", with an athletic build softened by the warmth in her eyes. She offered a hand. Tracy. Emma, she said, shaking it. Tracy's hand was warm, her grip firm but not showy. You always this philosophical in airports? Only when there's no chance of escape, Tracy said, glancing toward the storm outside. And since we're clearly trapped here together, might as well make conversation before the feral passengers start a rebellion. Emma snorted. That might already be happening at Gate B, someone just threw a pretzel. Tracy's smile spread. Then we should probably form an alliance. Safety in numbers. And somehow, that was how it began. Two strangers in an airport, tethered by the sheer absurdity of being stuck in a place meant for departures. They moved to a quieter corner of the terminal near a row of vending machines and started talking, not the kind of polite, surface-level small talk you offer out of obligation, but the kind that sneaks up on you. Tracy was a wildlife photographer on her way home from Alaska. She'd been out there for 3 weeks chasing images of caribou migrations, her eyes lighting up when she talked about the silence of frozen landscapes and how it reminded her that she was small, but in a good way. Emma, meanwhile, was a children's book illustrator, a fact she shared sheepishly. You say that like it's a confession, Tracy said, sipping her coffee. Emma shrugged. People hear that and think it's easy. That I sit around drawing rainbows all day. They don't see the deadlines, or the editor notes telling you your bear isn't emotionally engaging enough. Tracy laughed. An emotionally unavailable bear. Sounds tragic. Tell me about it. They sat side by side as the storm turned the sky a deep, bruised gray. The hours passed in slow waves, updates over the loudspeaker, shuffling passengers, the scent of wet coats and burnt coffee. But for Emma, the chaos blurred to background noise. There was only Tracy, her quiet confidence, her way of listening like she actually cared about every word, her stories of photographing glaciers and the ache of wanting to be everywhere at once. By late afternoon, the terminal lights dimmed as the storm outside deepened. Emma found herself laughing harder than she had in months, the kind of laughter that starts low and catches until you forget you're supposed to be disappointed about anything. Then, a flash of lightning streaked across the horizon, illuminating Tracy's face in silver blue light. Emma caught her breath. Tracy noticed. You okay? Emma nodded slowly, her voice caught somewhere between nerves and wonder. Yeah. Just, didn't expect this. Expect what? To meet someone who makes a cancelled flight feel like fate. Tracy's gaze softened. I was thinking the same thing. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, time stopped pretending to move forward. A cheer went up near C12, false alarm, someone finding an extra outlet, then dissolved back into the low murmur of 1,000 private inconveniences. Tracy leaned her shoulder lightly against Emma's, a casual brush, a test balloon. Emma didn't move away. Do you think anyone actually sleeps in these chairs? Tracy asked, eyeing the rows of chrome and vinyl. Only people with titanium spines, Emma said. Or the enlightened. Same difference. They ended up abandoning the chairs for the floor, backs against a support column, their little island formed by a suitcase, 2 paper cups, and the warm halo of a charging station. Emma pulled her sketchbook from her tote. She hesitated, then flipped it open. She wasn't precious about it, crooked thumbnails of bears and children in rain boots, messy watercolor swatches, a page of failed owls, but it still felt like undressing in public. Tracy took it reverently, as if she were being handed a fossil with fingerprints of time. Your lines look like you're listening, she said after a minute. Like you asked the character what they wanted to be before you drew them. Emma felt her cheeks heat. Or I panic and keep drawing until it looks like something. That too, Tracy said, grinning. You said you like the silence of frozen places, Emma said. Is it lonely? It can be, Tracy said. But the kind of lonely that is clean. Not the kind of lonely where you're surrounded by people and feel like you're missing a page from a book everyone else got. Emma nodded slowly. I know that one. She paused. I moved to Portland last year. New city, new studio, new everything. Thought it would be a grand reset. Turns out you can reset so hard you forget your own password. Why Portland? My sister. And trees. And the idea of living somewhere people wear flannel without irony. Tracy laughed quietly. I'm supposed to turn 35 in Denver next week. My half-brother's throwing a barbecue that will end in 2 things, him burning the corn and telling me I should finally settle down. Do you want to? Burn the corn? Settle down. Tracy leaned her head back against the column. I want a home base. Not a cage. I want to keep disappearing into the snow because it reminds me what matters, then come back to someone who says, hey, I left soup on the stove. What about you? Emma swallowed. The truth rose up, uncloaked. I want something I didn't think I was allowed to want, she said softly. The kind of love my mother calls impractical. Not because it's between 2 women, we got over that battle years ago, but because it's messy and inconvenient and arrives during cancelled flights. Messy, inconvenient, and terminal adjacent, Tracy said, eyes bright. Sounds like a plan. A flicker of the lights rolled across the ceiling. The storm shook itself and howled. The intercom crackled again, all flights after 7 p.m. are cancelled. Please see an agent for overnight accommodations. We apologize for the inconvenience. Groans. A distant sob. The sound of a child gleefully announcing, we live here now. Tracy exhaled. Guess we're roommates. Emma laughed, then stopped when the implication landed between them like a folded hotel voucher. I've never been good at this, she said. Overnighting in airports? Meeting someone and feeling this. She gestured, helpless, towards some shared perimeter around them. Wanting to stay in it longer than makes sense. Tracy's eyes softened. Who told you that wanting something is the same as pressuring it? Emma blinked. I had an ex who treated desire like a debt. If I wanted more, I owed more. If I didn't, I was cold. I became a thermostat. Servicing the room. Bad ex, Tracy said. No soup for her. A gate agent started a line that looked more like a centipede. Tracy stood. Come on. Let's go get our little corporate apology. They joined the crawl of humanity. The carpet smelled like wet wool and spilled sweet coffee. A toddler waved a sticker sheet in Emma's direction. She stuck a star on the toddler's sleeve, earning a triumphant squeal. The line advanced by geological processes. Somewhere above the clouds, a sliver of moon must have been trying to exist. Down here, the fluorescence buzzed and a woman in a poncho cursed in 3 languages with admirable creativity. Where are you headed, ultimately? Emma asked. Denver. I'm connecting in Seattle. You? Seattle is my last stop. Family? Emma nodded. My sisters do any day. I promised I'd be there to scare the baby with my middle school clarinet. At the counter, the agent handed them each a glossy voucher for the airport hotel, a meal ticket, and a tiny toiletry kit that looked designed for elves. Shuttle leaves every 15 minutes from door 4B, the agent recited like a bedtime story they'd told too many times. The lobby of the hotel was a warm joke, too many plants, a fireplace insisted into life, carpet patterned like a 1990s screensaver. Tracy traded her voucher for a key, then turned to Emma, who was doing the same, both of them suddenly unsure what gravity applied. Do you want to? Tracy began. Have dinner? Emma finished, relief blooming. Yes. They ate in the hotel restaurant that smelled faintly of lemons and fatigue. The storm pressed its face to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Their waitress was kind in the way of people who have seen more than their share of delayed lives. They split a salad and a plate of pasta, fingers brushing when they passed the bread basket. Time, which had been sulking in the airport, returned shyly and sat with them, not rushing, just present. Do you ever think about the exact moment your life forks? Emma asked, twirling pasta. I think about near misses, Tracy said. How many times did I almost not go somewhere? The car that didn't start, the email that went to spam. My favorite photos exist because a river decided to rise a foot overnight or a fox decided to sit down on the exact rock I'd chosen. It makes you humble. Also makes you bold. Because if it's all one big pinball game, you might as well lean into the flippers. Emma smiled, a slow, sinking smile. Bold, she repeated, tasting it. After dinner they took their tiny kits up to their respective rooms, the carpet muffling their steps, the elevator mirror catching them side by side, Emma's dark curls escaping her messy bun, Tracy's damp waves trailing raindrops, both of them looking like people who had been surprised by luck and were trying very hard not to spook it. At Emma's door, Tracy hesitated. This is the part in the movie where the music gets indecisive. The music can relax, Emma said, feeling the quaver in her own voice. We can too. Tracy nodded. I'll text you my room number. If you want to keep talking, come knock. No pressure. No debt. The message came 3 minutes later. A number, and then, no soup obligations. Just company. Emma stood by her window, watching the rain river down glass. Her sister's name glowed on her phone. You stuck? Her sister texted. Yeah. Storm grounded everything. I'll try to get out early. You okay? Emma looked at her own reflection. She saw hope and fear wearing each other's jackets. Weirdly, yes. Want me to go all big sister and ask who Weirdly is about? Emma laughed. Please don't scare away my new airport friend. A few minutes passed. Her phone buzzed again. Love you. Don't overthink it. Good things show up in ugly places all the time. Babies, for instance. Emma pocketed the phone, took a breath, and stepped into the hallway. Tracy opened the door immediately, as if she'd known the exact second Emma would knock. Her room was identical to Emma's, a bed, a desk, a photograph of a mountain that looked suspiciously like stock art. Tracy had hung her damp jacket on the back of a chair and opened the window a crack to listen to the storm. Hi, Emma said, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Hi, Tracy said. I was about to make hotel tea. It's a form of leaf water that insults both words, but it is warm. I'll risk it, Emma said. They took their cups to the bed and sat cross-legged, steam fogging their chins. The conversation unspooled easily. Favorite childhood books, Emma, Matilda, Tracy, anything with maps, worst jobs, Emma, summer camp arts counselor during Glitter Week, Tracy, mall Santa photographer, biggest fear, Emma, becoming palatable at the expense of true, Tracy, waking up and realizing she had curated a life for photographs instead of a life for living. I haven't been in a room like this with a stranger in years, Emma said, tone light but not casual. Tracy's eyes lifted. Does it feel like a risk? It feels like a risk I can articulate, Emma said. Which is rare. Usually risk is fog. This feels like a bridge, high, sure, but you can see the other side. Tracy set her tea down. I like the way you think. Emma looked at Tracy, then at the window, the storm smearing the world into watercolor. When she turned back, she let her hand rest on the coverlet between them, palm up. Tracy placed her hand there, without drama. Their skin fit in the way of ordinary miracles. Stay? Tracy asked. Yes, Emma said. But also, sleep. I want morning with you, not just midnight. Tracy smiled, something relieved and bright passing through it. They turned out the lamp. The room held the sound of rain and 2 sets of breath. Elsewhere, planes slept like silver birds on their tarmacs. When Emma woke just before dawn, Tracy's arm was draped over her waist, their legs a tangle of warmth. Peace threaded itself into Emma's ribs. The shuttle back to the airport ferried a cluster of puffy-eyed passengers who looked like they'd survived a reality show about bureaucracy. The storm had passed, leaving the sky rinsed and sky blue. The loudspeaker voice sounded almost cheerful, flights rebooked, connections restored. Emma's new boarding pass said 9:25 a.m. to Seattle. Tracy's said 11:10 with a 2:10 connection to Denver. They pressed their foreheads together near a window streaked with the last of the rain. We could do an airport breakfast, Tracy said. Or a grand tour of the bookstore and a critique of their bear section. Emma laughed. I have to call my sister before she gives birth out of spite. Go, Tracy said. I'll guard the gate from pretzel throwers. Emma stepped away to call, buoyed by the sudden comedic dread of a sister who would answer the phone mid-contraction just to make a point. She returned to find Tracy with 2 bagels and a paper cup bearing a heart in black marker. I told the barista your name, Tracy said. She got creative. Emma looked down. The heart had a tiny arrow through it. Beneath, Emma. Foreshadowing? Manifesting. Softly. They ate on a bench under a glass ceiling that patched in squares of blue sky. Emma found herself memorizing small things, the way Tracy turned her wrist when she talked, the tiny scar near her left eyebrow, the way her laugh always started in her shoulders. Love, she thought, felt like getting new eyes. The world was the same. Everything gleamed different. Can I paint you? She blurted, then faltered. Not now, obviously. Later. If there is a later. Tracy's smile did the slow sunrise. If there's a later, you can paint me as a fox on a rock or a bear learning to be emotionally available. Deal. When boarding time approached, they stood. The line to the jet bridge was full of people who looked like they had already started forgetting the storm because that's what people are built to do with miracles. Emma turned to Tracy. I've never believed in soulmates, Emma said. But I believe in intersections that change everything after them. Then let's not make this an anecdote, Tracy said, the playful tone threaded with steel. She took Emma's phone, entered her number, and texted herself. There. Now we have a bridge. Tonight I'll be in Denver. Tomorrow I'm free by 6. If you're still in Seattle, I can fly up. Or you can come to Denver after baby duty. We can choose. Emma nodded, her throat tight. We can choose. They kissed quickly, the kind of brave, public kiss that made an old man in a mariner's hat smile into his newspaper. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was simple and true. It was theirs. On the plane, Emma felt the emptiness of the seat beside her like a phantom limb, then felt it fill with something larger, a sense of trajectory. She sketched in her notebook during takeoff, 2 figures on a bench under a glass ceiling, a fox on a rock looking over its shoulder. Seattle arrived in a wash of green and glass and air that tasted like pine. At the hospital, her sister's belly was a mountain and her laugh was a bell. They traded jokes and granola bars. The baby, not one for schedules, decided to wait. Emma slept on a recliner in a room that beeped politely at its machines and woke to the morning sun painting a rectangle on the tile. Her phone lit up, a photo from Tracy of the plane wing above a quilt of clouds. Denver tastes like dry air and relief. Barbecue tomorrow. Corn destined to be crispy. Thinking of you. Emma sent back the sketch of the fox. Found your rock. When the baby finally decided to arrive, fast, fierce, perfect, Emma cried in the way of people who are surprised their hearts have more rooms than they thought. She held the tiny, wrinkled miracle and whispered, "Welcome to the beautiful mess." That night, she walked the hushed Seattle streets to a late cafe, ordered a chamomile tea, and opened her notebook. She drew Tracy's hands. She drew the outline of a life that might exist if two people were both brave enough to choose it repeatedly. Her phone buzzed. A video came through, a backyard full of people yelling surprise, Tracy laughing and pretending to be outraged, her half-brother with a spatula, waving it like a sword. Tracy turned the camera and pointed at the grill. The corn was charred beyond recognition. She typed, "Prophecy fulfilled." "Happy almost birthday," Emma sent. "Do you want a present?" "Yes," Tracy replied. "But only if it's also for you." Emma typed and deleted 3 times, then let the words be simple. "Come back to Seattle." There was a long 5 minutes. Long enough for Emma to second-guess and then choose not to. Finally, the typing indicator appeared. "My editor will scream and then forgive me," Tracy wrote. "Flying up day after tomorrow. 3 p.m. I'll text you the flight number. Meet me under the glass ceiling?" Emma laughed alone in the cafe and earned a fond glance from the barista. Gate C12. Where the world broke open. 2 days can be a new kind of eternity when you carry it careful. Emma visited her sister, bought a onesie with a cartoon otter, and found herself walking toward the airport hours early. She sat where she had sat the day of the storm, the glass ceiling above her a reminder that sometimes you can see the weather of your life and sometimes you can only feel it. She almost didn't notice the small commotion by the entrance, a woman carrying a white poster board and a bouquet of grocery store sunflowers. Then she realized the poster said, in big block letters, "No soup debts, only soup." Tracy, damp from a fresh drizzle, hair a little wild, eyes bright enough to make the terminal blush, was standing on the far side of security, holding ridiculous flowers and a smile that collapsed all the stadium seating inside Emma's chest. Emma ran. Not because she was dramatic, but because her body decided it wanted fewer seconds between now and then. They stood in the middle of the streaming crowds and let airports do what they do best, witness departures and arrivals and the quiet math of reunion. "I brought soup," Tracy said, half laughing, lifting a thermos from her tote. "Actual soup." Emma took the flowers and sniffed them, as if scent could record time. "We're going to confuse everyone with our commitment to legumes." "Good," Tracy said. "Let's be confusing in public." They left the terminal and found a bench outside beneath an awning that dripped in soft, periodic commas. Emma poured soup into the thermos cap. They took turns sipping, an absurd communion that felt like a vow. "Okay," Tracy said, after. "Parameters. Schedules. Who we are when we're tired and who we are when we're scared. I want to do this like adults who still believe in foxes on rocks." Emma nodded. "I have deadlines and a sister who will hand me a baby at random intervals," she said. "I don't want to perform ease. I want the real thing. Including the awkward." "I can offer awkward in bulk," Tracy said. "Also awe. Also the occasional picture of a moose butt." "Sold," Emma said. They spent the afternoon doing nothing glorious, grocery shopping, wandering Pike Place, buying a cheap umbrella that flipped inside out twice before surrendering. Tracy held Emma's hand while they watched a street musician play a song that wasn't very good but was played with the kind of earnestness that makes goodness irrelevant. They walked the pier and leaned over the railing to watch sea lions loll like old men on vacation. As the day folded, they returned to Emma's sister's apartment to deliver soup and sunflowers. Tracy, instantly claimed by the baby, stood with eyes wide, making faces that earned gassy approximations of smiles. Emma watched and felt the future click a notch closer. That night, back at Emma's place, a studio with tall windows, plants that tried their best, and a string of yellow lights tangled like a constellation, they sat on the floor and went through Tracy's photos on a laptop. Glaciers like blue mussels. A fox mid-leap. Once, a landscape so white it made Emma's eyes water. "What do you do at the edges?" Emma asked. "Where the snow ends and the sky begins?" "I look for a hairline crack," Tracy said. "There's always one. It's how you know where to step." Emma leaned in, closed the laptop, and kissed her. They navigated gently, making room for nerves and delight and the sudden tenderness that comes when you realize someone has been careful with your name from the moment they learned it. Later, wrapped in the soft hush of the studio, Tracy traced the inside of Emma's wrist with a fingertip. "What are you afraid of now?" she asked. Emma thought about telling a joke. Instead, she said, "I'm afraid I'll need too much, or that I won't ask for enough. That I'll compromise myself into a shape that fits a carry-on." Tracy lifted Emma's hand and kissed the center of her palm. "Let's make a rule," she said. "We tell the truth even if our voices sound silly. We ask for soup when we need soup. We refuse the carry-on." Emma let herself laugh into the quiet. "Deal." The next weeks were a braid of flights and train tickets, of Tracy's work and Emma's deadlines, of Denver and Seattle and a snowy weekend in Leavenworth where they learned the fine art of gloves and shared breath. They fought once, in a parking lot under a sky that had been open and then suddenly decided to snow. Emma wanted to finish an illustration on a timeline that her editor had invented. Tracy wanted to drive 10 miles back to photograph a tree she'd fallen in love with. Their words became sharp. A silence arrived and sat between them like a referee. Tracy finally said, "I want to want your deadline as much as you do. And I want you to want my tree as much as I do. I'm worried that wanting both will split me open." Emma stared at the snow building on the windshield. "I'm worried wanting both means neither of us is home." Then Emma remembered the airport, the absurd, fluorescent baptism of beginning, the scuffed carpet and the clean want. She drew a breath. "Let's name the thing," she said. "Let's call it the and. I want the work and the life. I want you and me. If we make room for the and, maybe it stops feeling like a robbery." Tracy's shoulders softened. She nodded, then started the car and drove them back to the tree. It was just a tree. It was also a cathedral. Snow laid its quiet on every branch. Tracy stepped out into the white and lifted her camera. Emma stood beside her and looked with new eyes. When the shutter clicked, it sounded like agreement. They bought a second thermos for their soup treaty and made it a ritual. On days when one was thinned out by the world, the other brought soup, literal or metaphorical. They stacked ands like bricks and built a small architecture of days. They made a baseline out of shared breakfasts and postcards from laundromats. When they didn't know how to do it, they said so. They learned each other's weather. The airport remained a hinge in their story. Sometimes, passing through, they would detour to gate C12 and sit for a minute, letting the low roar of transit remind them that most miracles start out as inconveniences. Over time, the world put new storms in their path: a family illness, a client who haggled dignity, a missed connection that turned into a night on a plastic bench in Phoenix. They handled them the way people do who have chosen each other deliberately. They were not always graceful. They were always honest. They failed forward. They held the line when fear tried to bargain. On an ordinary spring afternoon, sitting on a rug in the studio with soup and a playlist, Emma looked up from her sketchbook. "I want you to leave a toothbrush," she said. "I want it to be weird if it's not here." Tracy blinked, then grinned so brightly it made the plants seem greener. "I already did," she said, sheepish. "It's behind the basil, because I didn't know how to say it." Emma went to the window, moved the basil, and found a blue toothbrush leaning like a secret. She brought it to the sink and placed it in the green ceramic cup beside her own. It looked right. They flew less for a while and drove more, map lines becoming muscle memory. On Emma's birthday, Tracy taped a paper heart to the inside of the glass ceiling at gate C12 with a discreet piece of washi tape. On Tracy's birthday, Emma bought stock in a soup company as a joke and framed the certificate. They posted a photo of it on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a fox. People asked them how they'd met. They told the truth and watched eyebrows lift, as if fate were a thing only tolerated in movies. Emma understood. She also understood that the difference between accident and intention is attention. You can trip into a life. You can also hold it by the handle as you walk. One night, as a fall rain rehearsed itself on the windows and the city breathed, they lay on the floor of the studio on a pile of blankets, looking up at the string lights. "Do you think this is what settling down feels like?" Tracy asked. "Because it doesn't feel like down. It feels like settling into. Like a color soaking into paper." Emma turned onto her side, propped her head on her hand, and studied the face she loved and kept learning. "I think we built this on a cancelled flight and a pot of soup," she said. "No wonder it holds." Tracy reached out and, with infinite gentleness, touched the place over Emma's heart. "Home base," she said. "Not a cage." Emma took her hand and held it there, both of them quiet for a long, good time. The storm went on. Outside, planes traced their routes across a sky they couldn't see, and the city stayed up, and somewhere a gate agent called a flight like a blessing, and in the studio a light kept being a light. "Tomorrow," Emma said, "let's go sit under the glass ceiling." For no reason. "And then come home." "Tomorrow," Tracy agreed. And they did. Epilogue. A year later, the airport was a different kind of chaos, sunlight streaming through the same glass ceiling, families spilling laughter across polished floors, the scent of pretzels and jet fuel indistinguishable from nostalgia. Emma and Tracy stood at gate C12 again, hand in hand. They had come full circle, not because they believed in symmetry, but because some beginnings deserved to be honored. Tracy's next photo assignment was in Iceland. Emma's latest book, The Fox on the Rock, had just gone to print. It was about a fox who found home by wandering. Tracy had shot the cover image. "This feels surreal," Emma said, scanning the terminal where it all began. "Same gate, same chaos. Only difference is we're not waiting for something to happen anymore." Tracy brushed her thumb over Emma's hand. "We're just waiting for the next good thing." Emma smiled. "Do you ever think about how small the odds were? You, me, one cancelled flight." "I do," Tracy said. "And I think about all the versions of me that almost caught that flight. The one that didn't linger for coffee, the one that sat at another gate, the one that didn't laugh out loud when you muttered about fate under your breath." Emma tilted her head. "You heard that?" "Of course I did," Tracy said. It sounded like the start of something. Their flight was boarding soon, this time, on schedule. But neither of them moved right away. They lingered, because it was sacred now, this absurd stretch of carpet, these buzzing lights, this place that had taken them hostage and given them back a life. Tracy reached into her backpack and pulled out a worn thermos. "Soup for the road?" Emma laughed softly. "Of course you brought soup." "Tradition," Tracy said, pouring a little into the cap and handing it over. "The world's tiniest toast." They drank in silence. Emma leaned her head on Tracy's shoulder and let the noise of the airport fold around them, the same noise that once meant delay and loneliness, now carrying the sound of continuity. "Here's to cancelled flights," Emma said finally. "To small detours. To soup. To choosing the and." Tracy squeezed her hand. "To the moment the universe ran out of planes and gave us each other instead." When the announcement came, Flight 292 to Seattle, now boarding, they stood, gathered their things, and walked forward. The intercom crackled with static, the glass ceiling threw sunlight across their path, and for one perfect moment, the world was both vast and entirely theirs. Emma glanced at Tracy as they stepped into the jet bridge. You know, she said, one cancelled flight really did change everything. Tracy smiled. Let's never let it land. And together, they disappeared into the blue. The end.